so-called Biotron. As of today, this is the largest climate complex of its kind, where you can grow both weed and cultivated plants year-round under strictly controlled conditions, conduct various research, test new products and new substances, simulate any climate zones up to tropical ones, and work on developments such as breeding processes, for example, speed breeding. We already have something to show you and tell you about, so I'm sure it will all be interesting. Historically, as you know, we are a chemical company with a large portfolio of chemical products, but we are gradually and more actively starting to look towards bioprotection and developing our own line of biological products. Now, I suggest we go into one of the rooms. We plan to develop a line of biological products. These include biofungicides, insecticides, and microbiological fertilizers. This year, or rather last season in the summer, during one of the expeditions, an interesting bacterium was found in the rhizosphere of an apple tree. It has very strong antifungal activity. Now we keep it stored in the refrigerator over there. It has already been cultivated using this equipment. Right now, it is being studied very carefully and tested on different pathogens. That's why we hope that this bacterium, which was accidentally discovered in the field, can also become the basis for, say, some of our biofungicides. We
have in Russia, in Krasnodar, an institute, the All-Russian Scientific Research Institute of Biological Plant Protection Products. And the company August has been participating in these trials for many years now. We are there as the chemical standard, meaning we are always present in the test plots at this field day as the chemical standard. And let's say we've also been closely monitoring the development of biological plant protection products. And among other things, some employees from the NBZR have come to work with us here.
As I mentioned, we conduct expeditions every year. Usually together with managers and technologists, we discuss with our agro-laboratories where, for example, outbreaks of diseases are occurring. We travel to these regions, collect plant samples, soil masses, and insect specimens. We bring them to the research center, isolate, for example, pure cultures, examine them for pathogenicity, and add them to our collection. Another interesting thing we did, which really, let's say, made our lives much easier. We have a lot of clients from different regions, since AWS operates all across Russia. We also have a lot of clients from other divisions, departments, and directorates, like marketing and sales.
Clients for research?
Yes, clients for research. Previously, we managed all of this in Excel spreadsheets, keeping them updated. It was extremely inconvenient when a large number of experiments were being conducted in parallel. A large number of climate chambers. And that's why, when launching the R&D Center, we created an electronic application submission system. Now, regional representatives and the agro-laboratory are connected to this system. If they meet with partners or encounter any issues, they can literally spend just a minute to fill out this application. All databases are linked to this application, both for products and for the collections we've gathered. That is, they can check boxes, for example, indicating which pathogens or which insects on which crops, and the type of trials, Ingitra or Ingiva, and then they can track the status.
We were able to promptly identify these, specifically the infected insects. We dealt with the infected insects individually, and the rest, we bred the remaining aphids. Well, there weren't that many of them, to be honest, but you can see them. You can tell when an aphid is infected with Aphidius. In
these rooms, conditions are created not only for the insects, but also for the plants. By the way, right now you can see our humidifiers have turned on to maintain the humidity. The temperature is also regulated, the lighting is adjusted, and our staff water everything constantly so that the quality is maintained. If the plant feels good, then the pest living on it also in a way feels good. At the moment we have 4 types of nematodes. Root knot nematode, stem nematode, potato nematode, and sugar beet stem nematode. But for now, these are only for the collection. If we need to conduct tests on them, this will be scaled up in order to obtain a larger and more homogeneous nematode population, and then we can test various preparations on them.
The first myth, which is common among some people who aren't very familiar with chemistry, is that all plant protection products from all manufacturers are basically the same and don't differ at all. Then there are various other versions, like that nothing is actually made in Russia, everything comes from China, and so on and so forth. But the registration process in Russia, when it comes to biological testing, as Mikhail Vladimirovich mentioned, is, to put it bluntly, not always very good. And besides that, how are the tests often conducted? There's some popular product on the market. A registration company or seller, even without their own production, takes this product, buys it on the market, sends it for testing, for toxicology, and everything else, while giving it their own brand name, of course. After that, they go to an exhibition, for example, in the People's Republic of China. They find some manufacturer and say, we need a product with this and that active ingredient content. Make it for us. They figure out where, more or less, the price and quality will match their requirements. And after that, it's not the product that was researched, not the product that was tested, but a product under the same name from different manufacturers that gets imported. For example, the company Shan's released a product with a similar active ingredient content called Shan's Universal, also labeled as a microemulsion concentrate, and accordingly, the company Soyuz Agrohim released a product called Profifort also with the same active ingredient content, 300 grams of propiconazole, 200 grams of tebuconazole, and they also called it a microemulsion concentrate. And we, understanding that the Tyndall effect exists and having a laser pointer in hand, can easily determine which of these products is actually a microemulsion concentrate and which is not. What will happen if I shine the laser pointer through water? You'll see it, right? No, you see, you won't see it. Well then, let's prepare the working solutions. The application rate for the working solution will be 200 liters per hectare. The maximum application rate for all these registered products is 400 milliliters per hectare. Accordingly, we need to dissolve 2 milliliters of each product in 1 liter of water to get a working solution at the required concentration. Let's start with Golosol Pro. In principle, without a respirator. Well, here's the thing. You need 2 milliliters. So here are 2 milliliters of Kalashala Pro. Without a doubt, that is the work of Shaitan. Measure out exactly 2 milliliters of the Profifort solution. This is the union of agrochemicals. It is a highly potent and powerful concentrate of microemulsions. And accordingly, from the union of Grahim, or the union of Graham from Shansha, the universal was registered. Dear friend, where do you see the inscription? On the back of the bottle, in the center. Because Colossal Pro forms a microemulsion concentrate. Particles, if we check them with the appropriate device, we'll find that the average particle size is less than 28 nanometers. I have data on this topic with measurements taken on the appropriate instruments that we have. And now if we shine a laser beam through this concentrate, through the emulsion, we will see it. This is an effective impactor. Well, who are Green, Perrow, and Anderson? You? Famous storytellers, as they often say in the old books. And it turns out that if, for instance, the legendary Charles Perrault, the iconic Brothers Grimm, and the imaginative Hans Christian Andersen were all out there selling modern pesticides, well, that is just one part of the story. So, this is exactly what I showed you during the live broadcast, and accordingly, here with us today is Svetlana Speglazova, alongside a very well-known and respected potato grower, Alexander Nikolaevich Korolyov, who was. Now, I will let you in on a little secret. He is actually leaning in right now to ask me a very specific question. Nikolai Evgenievich, so Syngenta has made a new media formulation here, and they're telling such wonderful stories. Can we check it out, take a look? I said, who knows, but let's go ahead and check. So we went ahead and purchased all of the essential items that we needed. Here it is, Edelman Bolter. A specific batch number. There you go. We took our Orden and decided to compare them again using our science. At that time, the production people told me that grinding down to 1 micron is pretty tough. I thought maybe there's some technology where, during the chemical synthesis process, you end up with a micron-sized 40 centimeters, and then you don't need to grind anything at all. Everything is ready right away. So I started looking into the patent situation. By the way, look at how beautifully it dissolves. And I found a patent. It's our patent. The publication date is 1998, so that's more than a quarter of a century ago, almost 30 years now. For some reason, it's from the Kazan Scientific Research Technological Institute of Technical Facilities. A patent for the production of caloric solutions in non-containing products. It specifically stated that their technology allows for the immediate production of micron-sized particles during the synthesis of chloroximedia. And here is a table from that patent. When I saw it, something vague flickered in my mind. I had seen it somewhere before. I'd seen this table somewhere before. And as the classic, who I think appears on Channel 1, says, coincidence? I don't think so. I would have agreed if, say, the patent had 300 and 200, and the table with ingent, for example, had 300 and 180, or maybe 320 and 150. Well, you know, if the numbers were different somehow. But when you see that the data table matches perfectly down to the very third digit. So, in the end, I decided to hand all of this important research over to the laboratory for further analysis. That's it. Now, Syngenta claims that chloramate is invented and produced by Syngenta using this method. That is not true. The product is manufactured by an Italian company. That's what it's called, made to order for Syngenta. But again, it's a minor detail. Many multinationals, outsourcing. We also manufacture products on an outsourcing basis for foreign markets. Well, it's a bit of an inaccuracy, but nothing more than that. They took it, handed it over, and got results using a device called the Mauer Mastersizer. They have now left Russia. The devices are no longer supplied to Russia, but we have a stock. They allow us to measure dispersions and suspensions as small as 100 nanometers. And here's what we see. The red line, that's Orden. This is 0.1 micron, 1 micron, 10 microns, 100 microns. And accordingly, the green line is Ritamin GOPR. What can we say when we compare these lines visually? Frankly speaking, they differ only slightly. And the dispersity of both products is very similar to each other. If we take all of this data and carefully organize it into a comprehensive table for comparison, we will clearly see that for particles measuring up to 1 micron, the formulation of Ridamil Gold contains only 18% of the total product volume. On the contrary, when we look at the other options, we find that it is actually 15% of the product in that specific category, whereas in the case of Orden, the concentration is measured at exactly 18% of the product as well. And let's say up to 10 microns, we have 81% of the product, while they have 76%. So in principle, Orden even has a finer grind than Ridamil Gold one. And by the way, regarding the content of surfactants, there turned out to be more surfactants in Orden as well, because the wettability of this microphotograph on the surface of a tomato leaf with a 0.5% Orden solution performed better than a 0.5% Ridamil solution. Among the employees of Syngenta, there are or were people with the last names Grimm, Perrault, and Anders. There are simply patents in which these surnames are mentioned as Syngenta employees. That's how I found them. In this case, the coincidence is indeed a coincidence. And going back a little earlier, we've talked about a terribly interesting formulation that doesn't correspond to reality. But to actually detect this discrepancy, you need to conduct fairly in-depth research, which, generally speaking, without special And in the detailed brochure, it was clearly explained that thanks to this unique colloidal composition, the formulation was poured in. I actually used to make suspensions myself, and strangely enough, they always had such a beautiful, vibrant blue color. Well, as we know, many copper salts and various copper compounds are indeed blue or green in appearance, but theirs surprisingly turned out to be a very dark brown. I thought to myself, fine, I'll go ahead and do it, and now, together with all of you, I'm using exactly 5 grams of Orden and about 6 or 7 grams of Ridimil Gold R. We'll carefully make 2 separate working solutions based on the officially registered consumption rates for the working solution and the product itself, and then we'll see exactly how Ridimil Gold R completely and effortlessly dissolves in just 5 seconds when preparing the final working solution. It is quite a fascinating process to observe in real time. I also have all the batch numbers. This is a legally purchased product. Here it is, WDG indeed. Just so you know I'm not lying. Everything's fine. WDG really is better. They don't create dust, from my point of view. And if anyone has the chance, in 6 to 5 seconds. Of course. What should I call the start? Well, you say start, and I'll pour it in. Start. Exactly 5 seconds of time are going to pass by. Well then, I understand that it's impossible to measure like the particle size. Now I'll do the same thing. I'm doing the same with Sardan. We're not promising that it will dissolve in 5 seconds. We don't make such promises. We're just going to compare now how the working solution turns out with Orden. By the way, it's actually blue in color. Well, now that we are discussing it, I think it is perfectly clear and apparent which of these products actually provides a much more effective working solution overall.